I'm trying to complete every lifetime wish in The Sims 3. Like last time I took a super long break, I don't have an excuse as to why this video took so long. I work full time and I do this in my spare time, and I haven't really felt up to it. We all know that feeling when you come home and you just wanna not. Yeah, that's been me for a while. If you've been waiting on this video, sorry, they have been taking so long, but I do appreciate you being patient. This episode, we are on Wish 13, the Culinary Librarian. Learn every recipe. It sounds simple, and it is. In fact, it's way simpler than it needs to be. We'll address that in just a second. First, the traits. This time we have unstable, loves the heat, flirty, adventurous, and family-oriented. Nothing that really makes this easier, but I don't think any particular trait would be a huge downside to this one either, so we'll tackle it with what we have. Now for the mini challenges, and here is where we will circle back to that little detail of this wish being easy. You don't actually have to learn every recipe for it to trigger. I saw a lot of comments about this in the last video, and it was actually a functionality I knew about since I've actually played with this wish before. So not really a mini challenge, I'm going to make this a mandatory step for completion. We are actually going to learn all the recipes in the game. That means at some point the wish will likely trigger, but we aren't going to end the episode at that time, so keep that in mind. So for the actual mini challenges, this sim is family-oriented, flirty, and adventurous, so we are going to try to get married or have lovers from all three destinations. Now, they do want a big family, so we're going to try to have a child with each partner from the different destinations. We have to take care of our lovely kiddos, and only the best for them, so we have to cook each child's favorite dish at least once. And we aren't stopping with kids. We want a big family, so we're going to aim to try to have at least one grandchild before we end the challenge. I think that's good, so let's not waste more time and get to the wish. This is Rosetta Libra. She grew up in a big family, and food was a huge part of how they bonded. So, when she got older and set out to make a family of her own, she of course revived the tradition of learning to make good food to bring them all together. Her own favorite food being salmon, she found her way to Barnacle Bay, a warm coastal town known for its fishing. She secured herself a modest trailer home and got established by taking a trip to the grocery store. She has to be able to start cooking with something, right? After securing some basics, she returned home to start a little garden for some renewable ingredients and some fresh produce for meals. With the garden secured, she had some free time, so she headed over to the local restaurant to take a class in cuisine. The experience left her wanting to learn more, so she headed over to the library to see if there had been any books on cooking. After reading for a bit, she stopped to have a chat with some of her new neighbors and made quick friends with Jasmine Noon. But it was getting late, so she made her way home to get dinner going, of course. Home-cooked meal prepared, she ate and headed to bed, waking up the next morning feeling a little out of sorts. You know what will fix this? A home-cooked meal.
I'm making waffles.
That home-cooked goodness was just what she needed to remind herself to breathe. A paper bag helped, too. After breakfast, a storm made going outside a chore, so Rosetta took a trip to the local karaoke bar. She met a man named Raul, and they seemed to hit it off. They chatted for a while, and eventually Rosetta couldn't help but comment on his gorgeous chiseled jaw. Soon their chatting turned into a date. Rosetta had to show off her cooking skills, so she invited him back to her place to try out some of her home cooking. Then they enjoyed some TV, and ended the day getting to know each other. You know the deal, though. If you're gonna be a love interest, there we go. Raul stayed over, mostly watching TV, and Rosetta knew she was smitten. She made breakfast for her new boo, pancakes, even though he just ate leftover salad out of the fridge. It's fine, she burnt them anyway. Raul stayed over again, and Rosetta had been enjoying her time with him so much, she asked him to be official, which he agreed to. He stayed over again the next day, too. These two are getting real cozy together. Rosetta knew she was falling hard, and as a family-driven sim she was, she knew what she was headed for. She woke up the next morning, all in her own head. She tended to her thriving garden and had to get out of the house, so she went out to do a bit of fishing. She was losing her grip on who she thought she was, and her Delulu state erased her traits? What? Hey, editing Mari. So I think the unstable trait is a little broken. Sometimes when I would let it swap her traits, it would just do this, where it would erase one of them and not replace it with anything. I will account for this bug in the future by putting all of the possible traits on a wheel and rolling to see what it would be when the game didn't actually choose one on its own. Just thought I'd make that known. She had to talk to someone. She didn't want to be the person different than Raul had fallen for, so she went to go get some professional help and calm herself down before heading home to get some rest. The next day, feeling much better, she called up Raul and met up with him at the park. They hung out and had lunch before heading to a bar. She went home after that, planning to go out the next day, where she sold all of her current produce and bought some lotto tickets because she was trying to deal with another problem. You see, she was kind of broke, and her bills were 3,000 simoleons. Do I know why this happens to me randomly? No, the game just decides to beat a broke sim down sometimes. So she went to bed expecting to get a call from the repo sim. Oh, the randomizer mod for the f***ing save, are you kidding me? Feeling a lot more secure with the bills paid, Rosetta was ready to make the next big move with her life. She had some breakfast and met up with Raul. They had a date day, going to the beach, and then caught a movie. Rosetta splurged a bit with her new influx of cash, and they went to a nice restaurant where she took the next step and asked him to marry her. He agreed, and with her family dreams on track, she couldn't wait. They went to a quiet section of the beach right at sunset and tied the knot. She moved in with him into his much larger house, and she wanted to get right to starting a large family. During their whirlwind romance, she hadn't gotten the chance to learn about his past, and this guy has a history that both she and I were unaware of up until this point. I'm sure he'll be fine, and he totally won't act on any of those old relationships at all. In fact, when he said he was going out for a while, Rosetta trusted him completely. Raul was just out with a friend. Oh shit. Well, maybe this wasn't as innocent as she thought. Oh my god, her husband showed up too? Yo! Look, I was kind of hoping that he would get caught eventually. I did not expect for that to happen that fast. Well, this does not look good for Rosetta's new marriage at all. As she always did when she was emotional, she cooked. With such a supercharged environment, Rosetta couldn't even enjoy finding out that she was pregnant. She would have to be a parent to this baby if Raul showed her anything today. The next day, she tried to pretend everything was okay, but she was breaking down in her own head. She needed to get out of the house for a bit, so she headed over to the bookstore and splurged, buying every novice recipe she had and some baby books to prepare for the new arrival. She tolerated sitting next to Raul while they got some reading done, and a blue laser beam shot into the house. Wait, what? Okay, that was weird. After sitting in this uncomfortable situation for so long, she couldn't stand it anymore. She was done flirting with everything that moved, and she wanted something different. Editing Mari. Remember when I said that I would have to roll a few times? That happened here, since I let the unstable trait kick in and it didn't roll anything for her. Since this happened, I rolled a random trait and took what the wheel said instead. She still wanted love, but maybe she needed to look for magic in a relationship. Literally. She made the difficult decision to break up with Raul. She didn't think it was salvageable, and she needed to move on with her life if she wanted to find a real spiritual connection. For now, she relaxed and got a bunch of time to read the recipe books that she stockpiled while avoiding talking to Raul to keep the peace. After she completed her stockpile, she actually, by the game's definition, completed her lifetime wish. We mentioned in the beginning of the video that this wish has never really been updated. I think it only requires you to learn like 26 recipes or something like that. That was a part of the default game. Not really sure, but if the time left in this video doesn't tell you already, we are not stopping here. So ignore that, it's already completed because we ain't done yet. It didn't take long until the big day arrived and Rosetta headed to the hospital where she gave birth to a baby girl she named Rosemary. With this surprisingly happy pregnancy, the baby was super healthy, and with the random roll of the dice, she was a slob and perceptive. She was also blonde, which is strange since both her parents have dark hair, but they must both have that blonde recessive gene. Now that their daughter was here, it was time to have a difficult conversation with Raul, to let him know that she was moving on. They split and decided to split the household funds. Rosetta bought a small place for her and Rosemary nearby, still hoping Raul might be in her life, and they got settled. Rosetta spent the next few days getting used to single mom life. Crying, diapers, and bottles became her routine, with room to work on her gardening and cooking in between. Her hope for Raul to be a present father didn't really work out either, since he seemed to move on when he started to date Dina Caliente. They got committed pretty quickly, and he didn't really make much of an effort to come see Rosemary on a regular basis. He was apparently also being stalked by his ex though, so at least he had that to deal with. Before she knew it, it was Rosemary's birthday. She planned a party for her, ready to celebrate her firstborn. It was the first time she saw Raul since her birth. He looked different. After a quick makeover, it was time to blow out the candles. Ain't she a cutie? One sec. There we go. Rosetta entertained her guests as long as she could until she got tired enough to need to lie down. After a quick nap, she finished off the night sharing a meal with some friends, dressed like a pirate no less. The party ultimately went great, and the next day she decided to treat herself. She splurged on a trip to China, hoping to find some interesting new ingredients and recipes, while also giving herself a moment to explore her inner peace. She purchased some new recipes from the local shop and then set out to let her adventurous side shine. She explored through a tomb and stretched her curiosity muscles, then enjoyed a dinner of egg rolls at the market. The next day was sightseeing in the hail, unfortunately. She checked out the Temple of Heaven, then the Terracotta Army, then headed over to the academy to do some exercise for her body, and not just her mind. She learned some martial arts and spent the night at the academy, met some locals the next day, and ventured off to do some fishing and gathering some nice fruits that she couldn't seem to find back home. By the end of the day, she was drained, so she headed back to the base camp and got some rest before it was time to catch a flight back home, ending her trip. Returning home, Rosetta got right back to business on parenting, teaching Rosemary to talk, learning some of the new dishes she picked up from China, tending to her gardening, potty training. She was all in on giving her daughter a good life. She still had to take time for herself, and she had so much fun last time she took another trip to China to settle her mind. She needed some cash as well, so she volunteered for some more adventures, diving head-on into exploring for the short time she would be there. She finished another tomb, finding some really nice goodies that she could hopefully get some cash for later. But the highlight of her trip was meeting a man named Lee at the academy. He was there to train and offered her tips, but they got along really well. She still had dreams of a loving big family, so she threw a few flirts his way and asked him to dinner. They had a nice chat and watched the stars, then he said he had to go home. But not before Rosetta stole the kiss. You know the rule though. There we go. She was on cloud 9. Of course she had a whirlwind romance last time, but there was no way that she'd make that mistake again. After finishing another fetch quest for a bit of cash the next day, Rosetta went over to Lee's house to spend some more time with him. She was shocked to find out that he had children. Didn't run her away though. She loved kids. She spent the next day hanging out with Lee and his family, getting to know them a bit more. She cooked for them, helped to do some repairs around the house, got to know his children a little, fixed more broken things around the house, made them dinner. She was basically getting a taste of the family life she yearned for. Her time was limited though, so she would lose this feeling unless she did something about it. She invited Lee out for her final day there. It was unfortunately storming, but it didn't stop Rosetta from enjoying what time she had left with him. As her flight time approached, she didn't want it to end. So she followed her first mind and got down on one knee. To her relief, Lee didn't think her impulses were wrong, and he agreed. She didn't want to waste time, and she wanted Lee to come back with her, so they tied the knot right there in the ring. He and his twins, Lou and Zai, were all set to come back to Barnacle Bay. Once they made it back, she had to get her new instant family settled. And what better way than makeovers? Both Zai and Lou were big readers, so the house was still pretty quiet despite the increase in children activity. But Rosetta was still not at rest. She wanted a big family, and despite her family's numbers more than doubling in one day, she wanted more. Her spirit was at peace. She was still dabbling in the supernatural though, so she stopped by the elixir shop to sell some of the items she found while adventuring. She did some more shopping, checking out the recipe section of the bookstore to see if there was anything good. She was still a little under-leveled for the intermediate books, and they were a bit pricey, so she passed for now. Everything was going great. She was even more delighted to find out that they were adding another addition to the family. For the next few days, she was living in family bliss. She took her new stepchildren to the park to try to get to know them. They spent the day together at the festival and then headed home to spend a quiet night together. It continued like that for the next few days. Rosetta had a reason to practice cooking. She had the growing family she wanted. What else could she ask for except the continued push for her goal? Eventually, the big day came and it was off to the hospital to introduce the next addition to the family. Imagine rolling up to the hospital in labor and your doctor does this. After a few hours, Rosetta gave birth to another new baby girl, who is also blonde. I am not sure how this game chooses hair color sometimes. Rosetta must really have that recessive gene. They named her Sage, and with the roll of the dice, she got neurotic and loves the outdoors. New baby in arms, Rosetta couldn't wait to keep growing her family, and they adapted well to the new addition. She still had an itch to explore the spiritual connection to the bizarre and unknown, though. When she was visiting the elixir shop, the clerk told her about a special plant she could use that might grant her wishes. Apparently, the little fruit tasted like jelly beans. She bought one and put it in her room, intending to try one every day, but she didn't end up being the one to taste it first. Okay, not gonna lie, I did intend for this to happen eventually. I wanted some freedom to switch spouses again later, but I don't see family-driven Rosetta being one to cheat, so I put this thing there thinking that she'd make him try one every day and until a tragedy struck. I did not think that it would happen this fast, though. Losing her loving husband put Rosetta in a state that she didn't know how to deal with just yet. She was again a single mother to her own 2 children and her adopted children who just lost their father. She was gonna have to cope through this completely natural tragedy that I totally didn't stage, I don't know what you're talking about, and be strong for the children. She was going through it and had another episode. The supernatural took Lee away from her. She was done with that. The game decided that it wasn't going to tell her what she was going to do, though, so a quick spin and an NROS tweak later, and she became more perceptive about the world around her. The family had to recover emotionally. Getting Zai and Lu through this time was gonna be a challenge. Not to mention, she had to get through it herself. Time kept going, though, and it was already Rosemary's birthday again. She was too young to understand what was going on, so Rosetta sucked in her emotions and threw a party to give her the chance to see her father for however brief a time that might be. She aged up happy in spite of it all, and after a random roll of the dice, she was vegetarian. A makeover later, they threw a successful party and Rosemary got to sit with her dad for a while. Within a bit of time, the family got a life insurance payout from Lee's passing, and they moved into a more stable house they could be comfortable in. After making sure everyone would have a place to lay their heads, Rosetta got to work making this new place a home. The kids were away at school before she knew it, so she spent some time cooking to make sure the fridge was stocked for when they got home. The days went by quickly because before you could blink, things were changing again. It was Sage's birthday and she aged into a toddler. And it was also Lu and Zai's birthday who aged into teens. Sage and her half-siblings all got makeovers, and Rosetta could rest easy, knowing she did the best she could to help them grow up. While she enjoyed the time building the bonds with her family, working on her skills, and learning to navigate her new reality, she still wanted to do things for herself. Travel had always been something that Rosetta enjoyed to get away. She hadn't gone out on an adventure since Lee died, but it was time to put herself back out there. She wasted no time picking up a few tasks from the locals to replenish some of the money that she spent to get here. Before she adventured, she wanted to take a trip to the market to get some of the local recipes, though. She grabbed the books and met a man named Yusuf hanging out at the market. He was handsome and, of course, caught her eye. She chatted him up and found out that he was single. Seeing as she was in the market for another love, she threw a bit of suggestion his way, and he gave it back just as well. She asked if he wanted to link up later, and he agreed, so she headed out to complete her tasks by digging through a local tomb. She finished with no problem and kept her promise to meet Yusuf later. It went well. Most of the rest of the trip was pretty standard for her. She explored and collected some goodies to take back. She gathered any interesting fruits and vegetables that she might be able to use in her cooking, and got to unwind with a bit of romance. Coming home, she felt more relaxed than ever, ready to put back on the mom hat and coach Lu and Zai, who were still heavily grieving their father's passing. So of course it was a surprise when a few days after returning from her trip, Rosetta found out she was pregnant. The house would struggle to accommodate so many in its current state, so she took some of the money she earned from selling the objects from her trip and did some renovations to add another room. The next few days involved the family getting used to another addition in the house. Rosetta worked on cooking, making sure everyone had access to good meals. The kids continued to bond with each other. They spent the holidays out together as Rosetta tried to keep her relationship with them strong. Keeping everyone happy in the family so large was hard. It was only going to get harder when Rosetta went into labor one Saturday morning and there was another addition on the way. She had another baby girl she named Basil, who joined the family with loves the heat and outdoors traits. She brought the baby home and, oh, Yusuf. You know, I didn't know that if the father is from another country that they still come to the birth. That reminded her that she needed to talk with him. The long distance thing wasn't going to work for her, and he married since her last visit, so it was going to be time to break things off so she could find her true happily ever after. That was a problem for another day though. She just had a baby and the twins had a prom tonight. Rosetta went ahead and bought one of my favorite things to help with gaining skills since she was so busy, the tablet. She did some chores around the house while the kids enjoyed themselves. It was so busy, Rosetta forgot it was her birthday. Editing Mari here, so I think she was stuck for some reason. There were a couple of bizarre glitches I caught in the save, and I think that she was supposed to age up a bit ago. I thought it was odd that all the kids had birthdays and she didn't, so I checked the lifespans and it was correctly on normal by default. I didn't make the same mistake I did in a previous video. She had reached the end of the stage and just never had a birthday, and I must have forgotten the message pop up the day it was supposed to happen. Not sure why that happened, but I realized it when she was pregnant and triggered the birthday as soon as she gave birth. Sorry about that. A fully matured adult, Rosetta was having a bit of a midlife crisis. She popped in another podcast while she did chores, and at least she got to hear about all the fun the twins had when they came home. A girl named Melissa had confessed to liking Lou, and both he and his sister were named prom king and queen. At least she can say she was doing something right, and that was making them all happy. The next day was a big day because it was Rosemary's birthday. Her little girl was growing up and they had to celebrate. She planned a party for her later that afternoon and stepped out to do some errands until then. She finally felt comfortable diving into the intermediate recipes with her cooking skill at level 8. The price tag nearly broke the bank, but she had been pretty good at recuperating cash, so she knew that she could bounce back. As she set up for the party and everything settled in, the stress started to mount, and she had another episode. She realized she wasn't as adventurous as she used to be, falling into family life and liking the stability. The game again refused to pick an actual trait, so with the random roll, she stilled her resolve and fell into the focused pattern of a workaholic. It was probably for the best. They could really use the cash, so focusing on her work ethic for a change would only be helpful. Later that night, the party kicked off with the guests arriving to have some fun. This included Melissa, Lou's crush, who, you know the deal. If you're going to be a love interest, there we go. Rosemary also got one of the rare visits from her father. She hadn't seen him again since her last birthday, so she tried to connect with him in the fleeting time that she had. Eventually, she blew out the candles with her dad just blocking the doorway. Thanks for that. She grew up happy enough to roll for a trait and got loser. Ouch. Another makeover later, Rosetta officially had 3 teens in the house. The rest of the party went on without a hitch, and it was nice to see Rosemary have a moment to bond with her dad. There was no slowing down yet though, because the next day was Sage's birthday. It was Monday and the kids had school, so Rosetta wasn't planning to throw a big party this time. She had some cleanup from last night, so she popped in a podcast and did some chores. When the kids came home that afternoon, she made them all dinner while they did homework and played video games. And Sage aged up into a happy child, rolling the rebellious trait. Another makeover later, the family was building solid roots. The next day was still no reason to relax since it was Basil's birthday. Rosetta made some French toast, Zai's favorite dish. She put the leftovers away for her to eat later, and the day went smoothly after that. And thanks to the podcast that she had been listening to, she made it to level 10 of the cooking skill. Later that night, baby Basil aged up into an elderly toddler? There we go, that's better. The next day, the family all gathered for breakfast, and Zai got to enjoy her favorite meal. After the kids left, Rosetta actually had plans. She had invited over Yusuf for a couple of reasons. 1, he could see his daughter, and 2, she could end the romantic side of their relationship. He didn't take it the best, but after talking for a while, they reconciled and agreed that was for the best. Feeling much better with that taken care of, the family continued on pretty routinely after that. Rosetta stayed on her grind, gathering money to keep the family afloat, and they all continued to bond. So once she had a bit of cash in her pocket, Rosetta decided that she needed one more trip to work that travel bug out of her system and find the last bits of interesting recipes she could think she wanted to master. She took a trip to France, seeking out fulfillment, and headed straight over to the local market. She snagged the recipes they had available and ventured into the French countryside to explore. She spent the last bits of time on her trip chatting up the locals, but no one really caught her eye. She opted to instead enjoy the beautiful scenery and read some of her recipe books. Before she knew it, it was time to go home, and she made it back with some goodies that she hoped would replenish the family funds a bit. It absolutely did, putting them in a much more comfortable financial situation and letting Rosetta and the family focus on sculpting their relationships. Lou wasted no time taking up that offer of building relationships. He met up with Melissa, the girl who confessed to him at prom, for a date. They had some dinner together and then hung out on the beach. Lou made the best of his time though and managed to secure his first kiss. Before he had to leave, he asked her to be official and he had his first girlfriend. He came home to a busy house of the family quieting down for the day. Of course. All the excitement had everyone up much earlier than they needed to be, but at least it was the weekend. Once the weekend was over, it was back to work and school, with an added flurry of activity because it was Zai and Lou's birthday, as well as their little sister Sage's. The three of them, all having a birthday, meant that it would be a busy day, but since they had school, they opted to not try to force a party. They started out with a nice breakfast, then the kids were off to school. Rosetta did chores around the house and read through some of her other recipe books she stockpiled. After running a few errands, the kids made it home and it was time for a lot of aging. First it was Lou. He got to pick a trait and got rebellious, like his little sister. Then Zai, why does she only have 4 traits? Not sure why that happened, but I rolled the dice twice and accepted the second trait and then used cheats to give her both, so she got unflirty and virtuoso. Last was Sage. She rolled perceptive, and it was time to do more makeovers. I feel like I've been doing a lot of these this episode. Alright, there we go. Sage is all cleaned up, as well as Zai and their brother Lou. It was late after that, so the family headed off to bed, and the next day was Basil's birthday, and the kids got off of school to watch their siblings graduate. Lou was voted most likely to save the world and class valedictorian, and Zai was named most likely to be a rock star. The family came home after the celebration and tried to unwind, but things were changing so fast. With the twins young adults now, they announced that they were going to move out. I did invite over Melissa, Lou's girlfriend, and aged her up first. After another makeover, they all moved in together. Rosetta didn't know how she felt, but her family was still moving on, with Basil aging into a child and getting the unstable trait. Seems like Rosetta may be rubbing off on her. Another makeover. I really have been doing a lot of these this episode, and Basil was all settled into her childhood years. Rosetta took a moment to enjoy some leftovers of her favorite dish that she made the night before, salmon, and got the surprising news that Lou and Melissa were planning to get married. Wow, that was fast. They literally moved out this afternoon. And after giving the house another makeover to make sure everyone was happy and comfortable, it was back to business as usual the next day. With the kids back off to school, Rosetta did some searching around town. She had been looking for some seeds that might give her something interesting for her recipes, so she checked the consignment shop frequently to see what they had in stock. There wasn't much on hand, but the clerk mentioned something about finding cool things in the mausoleum, so she headed over to check it out. She came home just a little disheveled to find the girls working on homework with some friends. Rosetta got through more of her recipes, and when she was done with them, she would really only have the professional level books left to tackle. And the next day was pretty similar to the last. Rosetta checked the stores. Rosemary was made fun of at school, with even the teachers apparently calling her a loser. Poor kid. That night she wanted to do something nice to flex her cooking muscles, so she made some cheesesteak, Basil's favorite dish. Things, of course, were non-stop in her life. She got a call that Zai was marrying some guy, Chris Lai. She never met this guy, but she could only hope that Zai wasn't making a mistake. It was leisure day though, so she didn't want to ruin the mood with worry and took everyone out to the festival to have some fun. Zai happened to be there herself, so it was the perfect opportunity for Sage to do some more bonding with her. And Lou and Melissa showed up as well. The family was back together. That night, the Rocks and Gems event triggered. This is also a feature of the randomizer mod. Some of the medals that it delivered to Rosetta's doorstep were very valuable indeed. Getting some of these smelted and sold could maybe finally afford her the advanced recipe books that she had been eyeing but was never able to really afford. She would have to wait for them to come back in the mail though, so for now, she planned to enjoy her Saturday. She spent some time teaching Sage to drive. She wanted to know how so she can get to work easier. Basil was enjoying a nice day learning some fishing. And Rosemary went to visit some neighbors to try to make some friends. She had been struggling with that lately. She seemed to kinda click with this girl named Rosalinda, though she might have gotten a little too friendly. She didn't mean anything by it, or maybe she did mean something by it, or maybe she didn't. She didn't know, but she apologized and hoped that Rosalinda would keep it between them, and she headed home to hide from the embarrassment when the neighbors had to leave for the day. The next day was Rosemary's birthday. There were so many birthdays happening. Since it was on a Sunday, Rosetta thought that she would throw her a party. She had an excuse to invite over all of their friends and family, and it was a joyous affair because Lou also revealed that she was going to be a grandma, and he and Melissa, now married by the way, were expecting. It was just added icing on the cake that she sold those very expensive medals they found and got a nice chunk of money from it. Rosemary's birthday also meant that it was like the annual meeting with her dad. He had aged into an elder and of course rocked the trademark pigtails. Routing traffic jams ushered Rosemary into young adulthood and she rolled the good trait. Despite not growing up the coolest in school, she was a nice person and she wanted to help others, so she chose to focus her life on law enforcement career pursuing forensics. Time for another makeover for like the 100th time. I'm sure this will not be the last. There we go. Father and daughter have a new look. The rest of the party went on as normal. Rosetta got to be excited over becoming a grandma. Rosemary got to have a little chat with her dad, and as the party wound down, the family prepared to settle in for the night. The next day was Rosemary's graduation, so the younger girls got off school to watch the ceremony. She was named class valedictorian and voted most likely to motive fail. When the family growing stronger and extra cash to spare, Rosetta headed over to the bookstore and finally bought all of the advanced recipes, including the 12,000 simoleon ambrosia recipe. Rosetta wasted no time getting to reading and they fell back into the family life as usual. Rosemary managed to land her dream job with the local police department and started the next morning. And always full of surprises, Zai apparently broke up with her previous boyfriend and started dating a man named Kid. Rosetta had heard some things about that guy, like he already had some kids that he didn't take care of. She spent that day doing chores, and after work, Rosemary completed a request for her new partner at the department, Sarah Darwin. Why is she in a bathing suit? Okay, hold on. There we go. Later that afternoon, the family had more changes because it was Basil's birthday. She got to roll for her trait and got loves the cold. Why do I feel like loves the heat and loves the cold should conflict? I guess they don't. That trait's boring though, so let's try it again. Neurotic. Okay. With no more young children in the house and another makeover, by the way, the family was ever growing together. The next day, Rosetta wanted to treat the family in one of the best ways she knew how: cooking. She made one of the recipes she learned from her travels, crepes. This also happened to be Sage's favorite dish. There was, of course, also room for celebration when Rosemary got a promotion at her new job. She wanted to celebrate herself, so she called up her partner from work to go out for the night. Okay, I can't do this. Please hold. There we go. They went to grab a bite to eat and then headed out to town to do some karaoke. Listen to those beautiful singing voices. After breaking everyone in the bar's eardrums, it was getting late, so Rosemary headed home. Not before getting a hug though, and maybe she was reading too much into it, but it seemed like Sarah really liked hanging out with her. That's something she'd have to explore later though, so she headed home to turn in for the day. The next day, Rosetta got some interesting news that Zai got married in a whirlwind relationship with that Kid guy. Since she was married to this dude though, it was time for, you know it, another makeover. As the day progressed, Sage finally got to eat some of those crepes when she had some breakfast with her sisters, and she was ecstatic about it. And after the kids left for the day, Rosetta had a stop to make. Lou and Melissa had introduced their first child to the world, baby Eric, and he was Rosetta's first grandchild. She, of course, had to come over to spoil the sport, reminding her why she loved having such a big family in the first place. She helped Lou and Melissa by buying them a crib for the baby and made sure to tell Lou how proud she was of him. Turns out her new son-in-law was also at the house since they were having a little get-together, so she got to put eyes on this Kid guy. He seemed okay. at least at a glance, but she would need to know him more before she could be sure. And by the next day, being Friday and leisure day, Rosetta took the family to the festival to relax. They had some fun together, and later that afternoon, Rosemary met up with her partner for another round of karaoke. Since they had more time available to them on a Friday afternoon, they took some photos in the photo booth and played some video games until it was their turn to sing. Rosemary is having a lot of fun, and she might have mentioned how she thought that was because she was with Sarah. She was enjoying their time together just as much. She didn't know where this would go, but she was excited. That night, despite Rosemary's high, Rosetta got a call from Zai. She and her husband had been arguing, and Rosetta had to do her best to try to be there for her daughter. She did what she did best, and cooked. This time she made Rosemary's favorite, vegetarian dim sum. And just in time, because Rosemary saw on social media that Sarah had been rumored to be dating some guy named Ahmed, and her heart was broken. Rosetta had to take a break from all the drama, and it had been a while since she'd seen her grandbaby, so she went to visit Lou and little Eric, who had gotten so big since the last time she saw him. She gave Lou updates on everything going on with the family since he was busy with his own house, and he even let her know that they were expecting again. At least she got to see everyone and spend some time with them. Going home was rough. Rosemary confirmed that Sarah was officially with that guy that she heard the rumor about. Rosetta felt terrible, but she had to let her kids develop on their own. She took some time to unwind and read more of her recipe books after encouraging Rosemary to not feel too down. Imagine the relief when Rosemary saw that Sarah and Ahmed broke up. Rosemary was thrown for a loop, but maybe she still had a chance. At this point, by the way, Rosetta had learned 98% of the recipes in the game, and we are more than capable of blowing through the last one, ambrosia, but Rosetta still wanted something that she had yet to accomplish. Lasting love. It didn't help that today was her birthday, and no matter how much time she wanted, time kept ticking. She wanted to spend some time to think, so she planned a little gathering for later and then spent the day preparing. Rosemary took the calm of the moment to call up Sarah. She wanted to talk about everything that happened yesterday and figure out where they were as a thing, if they were a thing. To her relief, Sarah explained that she was confused because she really likes Rosemary, but she didn't know how to understand that at the time. After spending the day together, they decided to seal the deal and be official, so there was no more confusion with where they were. Rosemary had to go home to be there for her mother's birthday, but she invited Sarah to come by so that she can meet everyone, and they agreed to see each other later. The guests started to arrive, and Rosetta was in her element, surrounded by the people she loved. She greeted her guests and blew out the candles to usher herself into the elder years of her life stage. Her time to think earlier put her at peace because she knew this was not the end. As long as she had time, she could make her dreams come true. She got cleaned up and enjoyed her company. She was happier than she had ever been. The next day was Sage's birthday, but because of school and the party the night before, Sage opted to not do anything. Rosetta still had a reason to celebrate even more when she heard that she was a grandparent again the next morning. She still wanted to find love, so she made it a point to step out and meet some of the people around town. Unfortunately, due to her later years in life, most of the people her age were spoken for, and she knew the pain of someone breaking up a relationship. She would never do that to anyone else, but she didn't give up hope. That night, Sage aged into a young adult and got the trait Savvy Sculptor. The little reclusive, rebellious artist had grown into adulthood, and Rosetta couldn't be prouder. Things were quiet after that. Rosetta promised herself that she would read a bit of that ambrosia book every day, but she still hoped that she could find someone to make it with before she finished. She was ecstatic and worried to hear that Zai was now expecting. She still didn't trust her husband, but she could only be happy if Zai was. Of course, shortly after the announcement, she got a call from Zai that they were fighting again. She was busy since it was Sage's graduation, so she promised to connect with her later, and they headed over to watch the ceremony. Another child graduating into the world as valedictorian, Rosetta had been doing something right. They went out to dinner to celebrate, and even though Rosetta said she could just cook, it was a nice break to spend some time together. As it always had, things quieted down after that. The family moved on, but when Rosetta stepped out to get some fresh air, she bumped into a new face. A man named Keith, who just moved into town. Being the friendly person she is, she stopped to say hello, and they seemed to click with each other. When she found out that he was single, she of course had to shoot her shot. On a whim, she asked him on a date, and he agreed. She took him to the best restaurant in town and shared some of her favorite dishes. Then they caught a movie. Now, neither of them were children, and they had been around the block, so it was pretty clear that they liked each other. Rosetta asked and got herself a smooch before the end of the day, and went home with a pep in her step, excited that her dreams of finding someone may have finally come true. The next day, Rosetta invited Keith over. She liked him, but if she learned one thing, it was that her kids had to like him too. He met Sage and had a nice conversation, and then Basil when she was home from school. Once Rosemary came through the door, she was the last to meet him, and they chatted over dinner, of course. Being an officer, Rosemary grilled him, finding out that he was super into his family, if not a bit paranoid about it. He liked to be in the cold, even though he risked that by moving to this island, and he was a huge book nerd. To be fair, he sounded like a good match for her mom. They sat together and bonded, and it gave Rosetta the image that she wanted for so long of a family sitting together. Yep, she was falling for him. She was very much enjoying her time with Keith, so much so, and since he had such a difficult time getting settled, she asked if he wanted to move in. Seeing her mother fall in love made Rosemary want to continue to pursue her own. So she met up with Sarah and spent the day with her. They ended their date on the beach where Rosemary took the plunge and proposed. Sarah said yes, by the way. Ready to move on with her life and her partner, Rosemary decided to move out with Sarah. And unlike the fear she felt with the twins moving out, Rosetta was in a much happier place to see Rosemary going off on her own. With the kids she had left in the house dwindling, Rosetta was happy to have an excuse to take a trip to see Lou and his kids since both Eric and Kylie had grown so much since the last time she saw them. He and Melissa were also expecting their third child, so she really had to get over to their house and give some congratulations. On a different note, Sai had been having nothing but issues in her relationship, according to Lou, and it wasn't getting any better. Rosetta would have to plan to see her as well, especially when she got a call from a distraught Zai saying that they broke up. She knew that guy was no good. She would have gone to see her that afternoon, but she wasn't home, and she and Keith had dinner plans. They went out and spent some time cuddling on the same bench they did the day they met. Despite all of the crazy family news she got, she was overjoyed when Keith got down on one knee and proposed. She was finally getting her happy family ending. She knew it would happen eventually. The next day was spent making plans for the wedding, and she wanted to go see Zai, but she again wasn't at home. She for sure would never miss her mother's wedding though, so with the preparations in place, the big day finally arrived. As the I-do's were said and the kisses exchanged, Rosetta had finally snagged her man to complete her family. They celebrated with cake, and Rosetta finally got to talk with Zai. She was living proof that even if you go through ups and downs in life, you could come out the other side okay. Now married and living in bliss, Rosetta turned the last few pages of the ambrosia recipe that she had been delaying for so long. And once the cover closed, she had learned 100% of the recipes possible and completed her lifetime wish. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I want to apologize again about the delay in the video. I'm going to try to be more diligent about it. I am so inconsistent since I just play when I can, and that's by no means on any actual schedule. That is to say, in short, I will try to get these back on some kind of frequency, and I appreciate you for continuing to watch. So for the mini challenges this time, did we get married or have a lover from all 3 destinations? No, actually we didn't. I didn't feel like this family-minded, caring sim she became would break up a happy home, and most sims were already spoken for, so that just didn't really pan out. That means the next challenge is kind of an auto-fail. Did we have a child with a partner from each of the destinations? No. Same explanation as before. But did we cook each child's favorite dish at least once? Yes. I don't think I mentioned it in the actual script going back in editing, but Lou's favorite food was waffles, and I made that like a zillion times. Pretty sure I specifically called out all the other favorites at some point in the episode. She also cooked a bunch more times that I didn't necessarily highlight, but just know there was lots of cooking done throughout this challenge. And last but not least, did we have at least one grandchild? Yes. They were her adoptive kids through marriage, but she raised them, and both Lou and Zai had kids. So she was a grandma, and a bunch of times over. Lou had twins, by the way, at the end of this. There were two babies. He had twins for the 3rd time, so he had like 4 kids by the end of this. And that's it. Now that we've wrapped this one up, let's see what the next wish will be. First things first, we roll for the next wish. Hit movie composer. Reach level 10 in the music career track. Symphonic branch. Now for the traits. Perceptive. Loves the cold. Natural born performer. Vegetarian. Bookworm. I don't think any of those are necessarily a huge help, but they're not necessarily a bad thing either. I don't know, rabbit hole careers are normally pretty straightforward, so maybe we can try to come up with some fun stories to work with. We're also going to be rolling to put a trait back on the wheel, so let's see what that is. Good sense of humor. Some of the different categories are getting kind of low in the traits options, so just a heads up, as soon as we kind of like run out of them for one category, I'm just going to put everything back on the wheels and we're just going to start over. It's just a way of trying to get the Sims to be a little bit more diverse every time, so we're not rolling the same traits. But that's all I got for today. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time. Bye bye.